Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're all about getting to the heart of things that actually matter, and today,
Well, today we're tackling something I think we can all relate to.
hmm
We're going to be talking about how to really nail down and talk about what you want in an ideal partner. And specifically, we're focusing on how to do that in English.
you got it.
So, no matter where you are in your relationship journey, whether you're single, dating, or even in a long-term partnership, being able to articulate what you truly value is super important,
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've been poring over this incredibly detailed guide all about this topic.
Yeah.
It covers everything from how to phrase things to the actual strategies for having these sometimes tricky conversations. Our goal here is to give you the need-to-know info, like a fast track to feeling confident talking about these really important relationship topics.
Yeah, it's like a cheat sheet for the heart, basically.
Right.
Okay, so the guide starts off by stressing why it's even important to consciously think about your ideal partner qualities in the first place.
Yeah. And it's more than just creating a mental checklist, right?
Oh, for sure. One of the most striking things the guide highlights is how when you actually force yourself to put these desires into words,
Yeah.
like if you really try to pinpoint why empathy is so crucial for you, it makes you confront your own deeper emotional needs. And maybe even those past experiences where you felt that something was missing.
Ooh, that's interesting.
It's less about crafting that perfect partner shopping list and way more about creating this almost like self-portrait of what you truly need in a relationship.
I like that. A self-portrait of your relationship needs.
Exactly.
So it's almost like you can't really effectively communicate what you're looking for until you've done that inner work, that self-reflection.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to put it.
Okay. So the guide breaks these ideal qualities down into a few key areas. What are those? Can you give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, it emphasizes those, emotional attributes.
Right.
Things like genuine empathy, honesty, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Then it goes into intellectual qualities. So you may be a shared sense of curiosity, strong communication skills.
Okay, so you're on the same wavelength intellectually.
Exactly. And of course, it does touch on physical characteristics too. But then what I found really interesting is how much it stresses the importance of your core values and beliefs. Things like, ethical principles, lifestyle choices, and even your aspirations for the future. It's really about compatibility on a deeper level.
Yeah, because that stuff matters long term.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're talking about all these qualities, but actually talking about them, especially when English isn't your first language, can be kind of nerve-wracking.
Right.
Why does the guide say that clear communication, specifically in English, is so crucial here?
It's interesting. It frames it in this really empowering way.
Okay.
It's not just about making sure you're grammatically correct or whatever. It's about expressing your needs and desires with confidence. And for our listeners, especially those working on their English skills, the guide points out that being able to articulate what you're looking for fluently can really open doors to stronger, more authentic connections.
Right.
But it also acknowledges that there can be hurdles for non-native speakers.
Sure.
And it suggests really focusing on building your vocabulary and practicing those everyday relationship phrases so it feels more natural and less like you're memorizing a textbook.
Okay. Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that vocabulary then. The guide seems to have a whole section dedicated to just that. What are some of the key words and phrases we should add to our relationship discussion toolkit?
Well, one thing that really stuck out to me was its focus on using descriptive adjectives to talk about both those emotional and intellectual qualities. Instead of just saying, kind, go for something like compassionate, or instead of understanding, try genuinely empathetic.
Oh, I like that.
Thoughtful in their actions, insightful in their perspectives, that kind of thing.
Right. It paints a clearer picture.
Exactly. And then there are those key phrases and idioms that can just make your conversation sound, more natural,
Sure.
less like you're reading from a script.
Yeah.
So things like, I have a real soft spot for someone who is.
Oh, yeah.
Or, I find myself really drawn to people who are.
Yeah.
These are great ways to express your preferences without sounding too stiff.
Right. It definitely sounds more natural than just a plain, I like someone who is.
Exactly.
And I think it also mentions using comparative and superlative forms.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Being able to say something like, someone who is more compassionate than anyone I've met, or the most thoughtful person I've ever had a conversation with, it just adds so much more depth and nuance.
Right. It shows that you're really thinking about it.
Yeah. And the guide even suggests actively working on expanding your vocabulary by engaging with, like, English language media that explores relationships.
Oh, interesting.
Think books, podcasts, even well-written TV shows. It's like learning by osmosis.
Okay, so we have a better idea of what qualities to think about and the words to use. But how do we actually structure a conversation around this? The guide talks about building a narrative, right?
Yeah, this is so important. It's about organizing your thoughts in a way that makes sense and is engaging for the other person.
Yeah.
The guide recommends approaching it almost like storytelling,
Okay.
with a clear beginning, a middle where you dive into each quality, and a conclusion that brings it all together.
Right.
And for the beginning, it even provides this really compelling hook to grab someone's attention.
Oh, I want to hear this. What does it suggest?
Okay, so imagine this. You start by saying, imagine meeting someone who not only understands your heart on a deep level, but also shares your fundamental values and dreams for the future.
Ooh, that's good.
Today, I wanted to share some of the ideal qualities I look for in a partner and how I try to express these when speaking in English.
That's a great opener.
It sets the tone. It creates this sense of intrigue, and it invites the other person into the conversation.
Yeah, it's way more inviting than just blurting out a list of traits.
Right.
And then in the main part of your story, you can break it down by those key areas we talked about: emotional, intellectual, physical, and those shared values. The guide also suggests using personal stories to make those qualities come alive.
Yes. This is such a great tip.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, honesty is really important to me,
Yeah.
you could share a brief story, maybe about a time when a partner's honesty or lack of honesty really impacted you.
Right.
It just makes your preferences more relatable and memorable, and it gives the other person a real understanding of why these qualities matter so much to you.
It's like showing, not just telling.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the how of defining these qualities. Now let's get into the actual conversation strategies. What communication techniques does the guide highlight that might be particularly helpful for our listener?
Well, one of the most important things it emphasizes, and something I think is super valuable for anyone to keep in mind, is using I statements. This helps you personalize your perspective and avoid sounding accusatory.
Okay, yeah.
So, for example, instead of saying, you should be more empathetic, you could say, I feel really valued and understood when my partner shows empathy in these situations.
That's a good example.
And the guide also talks about how important active listening is, like really responding thoughtfully to what the other person is saying. It creates a genuine two-way dialogue instead of just a monologue.
Right, it's a conversation, not a lecture.
It's
It's not about just broadcasting your ideal partner criteria, but truly connecting and understanding each other.
I love that.
The guide also talks about this balance, right?
Yeah.
Being assertive about your needs, but also being sensitive to the other person. How do we walk that fine line?
It's definitely a delicate balance, and it's something I've struggled with myself, to be honest. The guide suggests expressing your preferences clearly and confidently. Maybe you're saying something like, for me, mutual respect in a relationship is absolutely fundamental. But at the same time, making sure your language is respectful and open to different viewpoints. It's about owning what you need without coming across as rigid or judgmental.
I see.
And it's also a good reminder that how we say things matters just as much as what we say.
Right.
Those nonverbal cues like maintaining eye contact, having a warm and approachable tone, they all contribute to how our message is received.
Totally. It's not just the English words, but how we deliver them. Now, the guide even includes some role-playing scenarios, right? Like examples of how these conversations might play out. Did any of those stand out to you?
There were a couple that I thought were really illustrative. One showed how someone could explain that they're drawn to people who are both intellectually curious and deeply compassionate.
Yeah.
They emphasize that kindness is a quality they find incredibly attractive. Another example, it was set in a more formal context, maybe like a first date or something, and it focused on the importance of intellectual stimulation and emotional stability. It's about having those engaging conversations, but also feeling safe and secure with your partner.
I like that combination.
Right. And the guide even suggests that practicing these kinds of scenarios yourself even if it feels a little silly, can boost your confidence and fluency when you actually have these conversations.
That's a really good tip. So we've talked about communicating clearly in English, but the guide also mentions the importance of being aware of cultural differences, which is huge in today's world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's considered important in a relationship can vary so much between cultures.
Right.
The guide advises being mindful of this, especially when you're speaking English with people from diverse backgrounds. And crucially, it says to avoid stereotypes while embracing the richness of those different perspectives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Being aware of those nuances can really prevent misunderstandings and help you have more respectful, meaningful conversations.
For sure. And the guide goes even further, right? It talks about some more advanced techniques for people who really want to refine their communication skills.
It does. It delves into using things like metaphors and similes to add color and depth to your descriptions. So, for example, you could compare someone's consistent kindness to like a steady, reliable source of warmth. It's more evocative than just saying they're kind.
Right. It creates an image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it also suggests incorporating humor, to lighten the mood, but with the important caveat of keeping it culturally appropriate and sensitive to the context. It's not about cracking jokes at someone's expense.
Of course.
And again, it emphasizes tailoring your message and your style to different situations. A casual chat with a friend is different from a deeper conversation with a potential partner.
Yeah, read the room. So the guide sounds super comprehensive. I mean, it even talks about the tougher stuff, like dealing with nervousness and rejection, which are inevitable parts of dating.
It does. For those pre-conversation jitters, it recommends preparation. Like actually taking the time to think about what you want to say, taking a few deep breaths to calm your nerves, and most importantly, focusing on being authentically yourself.
Yeah.
For those potential misunderstandings, it stresses the importance of asking clarifying questions and practicing patience. And for rejection, which, let's be real, can be really tough, it encourages adopting a mindset of graceful acceptance.
Right.
Viewing it as a learning opportunity that ultimately brings you closer to understanding what you truly need and deserve.
That's a great way to reframe it.
Yeah.
And the guide also points to a bunch of digital tools and resources that can help with all of this, from vocabulary building apps to online courses.
It's amazing how much is out there. It recommends language learning apps to actively build your English vocabulary, online courses for a more structured approach to developing those communication skills. And even podcasts and YouTube channels that offer more informal, but often really insightful perspectives on relationships. It's about using everything at your disposal.
Yeah, and learning in a way that works for you.
Absolutely.
And then it wraps up with some real-life case studies and practical tips for ongoing improvement.
Yeah, those were really interesting.
Were there any insights from those that stood out to you?
I think what really resonated with me was how much they highlighted the importance of clear, honest communication as the bedrock of strong, lasting relationships. They showed how articulating your needs and expectations can lead to this deeper understanding and a stronger sense of connection with your partner. And the practical tips really emphasize that this is an ongoing process. It's about practicing regularly, setting achievable goals for yourself, and celebrating your progress along the way.
Yeah, because relationships take work, right?
They do.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Let's distill it all down for our listeners. What are the absolute key takeaways for someone who wants to feel more confident talking about their ideal partner qualities in English?
Okay, so I'd say first and foremost, it starts with you, with self-awareness. Really understanding those emotional, intellectual, physical, and values-based preferences.
Right.
Secondly, remember that communicating these qualities clearly, it's not just about finding the perfect person, it's a journey of self-discovery that can help you set healthy expectations in any relationship. Third, using specific vocabulary and natural-sounding phrases can make a world of difference in how effectively you express yourself in English.
Right, those tools are key.
And fourth, don't underestimate active listening and finding that balance between being assertive and being sensitive.
It's a delicate dance.
It is. And finally, commit to practicing. Make it a regular thing. And take advantage of all those amazing resources out there to support your learning.
That's such a good summary. You know, as we were going through the guide, one thing that really stood out to me was how much it emphasized looking beyond just the superficial, the initial attraction, and really considering those deeper qualities.
Yeah, it wasn't just about that first spark.
Yeah,
It was about the potential for a real, lasting connection.
exactly. And another thing that I thought was super insightful was how it explicitly addressed cultural considerations. It reminded us that what we consider an ideal partner is often shaped by our own background and experiences.
Yeah, that's such an important point.
So for you, our listener, I really hope this deep dive has given you some concrete tools and actionable steps to start articulating what you're truly looking for in a partner.
Absolutely. And remember, being able to express those qualities clearly and confidently, it's not just about dating. It's a skill that can benefit you in all your relationships and help you grow as a person.
Totally. So here's a final thought for you to ponder as you go about your day. Think about which of your ideal partner qualities is the hardest for you to put into words and why that might be. What steps could you take, maybe using some of the vocabulary and strategies we've talked about, to express those qualities more effectively? And don't forget to check out those awesome resources mentioned in the guide.
Yeah, get out there and explore.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.